Hi everyone, I'm doing my talk for today and I'm not going to start a new section of the John Maxwell. I think I'll start that on Monday, but I just wanted to share a few points. I did the readings for today from the church, and the first reading was actually quite nice. It was from Ecclesiastes 17, 1 to 15. And it's basically talking about how God gives us a heart to think with. And in life, in this life, there's no life that is not touched by suffering. Everybody has suffering come into their life. And it doesn't mean, like when we read Romans 8:28, that says God works all things for the good of those who love him, those who he has called according to his plan. It doesn't mean that suffering is good in itself. It doesn't mean that all will be well if you just believe hard enough, because sometimes that suffering doesn't go away. You could be somebody like me, who you could have had a perfect life before you came to Canada, and then you could have come here and found that nothing works out for you. Because there's always roadblocks put in your way. There's always people who don't think the same way as you. So because they don't think like you, they think nobody loves you, nobody will pick you up from the airport, nobody will come and help you. And it may not be the case, but they are coming from their perspective because they've had jobs, they've had good health, they've had everything fall into place for them. They've had family support to buy their places. And so they are looking at things from their point of view. And I am looking at things from my point of view. But when we think about suffering, Archbishop Desmond Tutu had said that sometimes suffering is just suffering. We don't know in God's plan why we go through that suffering. We don't know why it happens to certain people and not to others. It could be genetic. It could be something that we are prone to in terms of our disposition. So, for example, for me, there's diabetes that runs in the family. There's leukemia. So, if those things come, I have no way of preventing it. And sometimes you take these tablets or you take things where they say this is going to prevent it, but it doesn't necessarily prevent it. So sometimes we have to leave that suffering in God's hands and just say to God, I don't know why this is happening. Especially in our world today. There's so many disasters. We've had over 7,000 earthquakes. And it's ridiculous. We've had floods in Africa, in Canada, snowstorms. We have people without food. And most countries are broke. South Africa is saying they're broke. Zimbabwe is saying they're broke. They had most of their debt written off by China, which is good. America is saying they're broke. Canada also is saying that, well, in order for people to live, we had to go into debt. So if this great reset, instead of making things better for everybody, it brought about chaos in our world. And that's normally what happens. The same thing happened with the IMF. Everything was going well for Zimbabwe. But the International Monetary Fund came in and they said, no, we want to do a structural reform. And under these conditions, things will get worse, but then they'll get better. But they never got better. And it's not only in Zimbabwe. There's case studies. There's a video I posted on LinkedIn and on Facebook about how economies have been destroyed by the IMF because their policies don't work the way they say that they're going to work. And now countries are withdrawing from the World Bank. They're saying, well, this was set up by the US, so if US is pulling out, why should we stay in it? And the bloc that has formed with the BRICS nations, are setting up their own systems and their own ways of doing things. So that's why for me, I'm saying if there's opportunities to go back and to work in the SADC region and to do what I want to do, which is to use my ministry skills and my John Maxwell, then I'm prepared to do it, because sitting at home for over a year is not what I want for my life. And this has been going on since I came to Canada. You're either overqualified or you're underqualified, or you don't have Canadian experience, or they're not prepared to train you even to pack a box in the factory. I mean, it's ridiculous, especially if you're coming here from England and your language, English, is your first language. It's ridiculous. So sometimes suffering is just suffering. And like with me, it's been a while now that I've been having these canker sores in my mouth, and then they burst and it's painful. And then I have to wait for them to heal and use mouthwash, and it burns. So I'm going through my own suffering. But we know that in all of that, God is with us, and God does not abandon us. The reading today that I focused on was the Ecclesiastes 17, 1-15, the heart to think with. So we are filled with knowledge and understanding. God reveals to us good and evil. God puts His light in our hearts. God shows us the magnificence of His works. And we can see all those things, and we can appreciate all those things even in the midst of our suffering, even in the midst of the stigma of ongoing unemployment, short-term contracts. And the companies that create them are the same companies that when you go for the interview, they'll ask you, why did you move around so much? Why is it that you're out of work for over a year? Because they haven't had to sit at home for a year. Nobody's let them go from their jobs. Nobody's told them, sorry, we don't have work for you. Nobody's told them, why don't you relocate and go to Australia? So for them, it's fine, because they have their support system, they have people willing to help them. And when you're a first generation immigrant, it's very different, especially if you are coming into a situation where you're on your own. It's not as easy. But by God's grace, we make friends. We have people we can reach out to talk to. We have good friends. We have counseling systems available. And in Canada, we also have medications and things that can help us, which people may not have in other countries. So that light that God puts in our hearts, we can reflect on the good things that we have. And we can tell people, because I tell people, yes, I do have people that are willing to come and pick me up from the airport, but I choose to come home by myself. I choose to take the bus. I don't phone them and say, can you come and pick me up? I'm coming back on this day. Because I have public transit available, so I prefer to do it that way. And it's not like, oh, no one's going to come and pick you up from the station. That's not the case. I just don't ask people. If I ask people and I tell them that, you know what, I'm coming home from my long trip on this day and I need someone to pick me up. I do have friends here, or I have work colleagues who have cars who will come and pick me up. But I am not that type of a person. I try to stay as independent as I can and to be as self-reliant as I can. So I think it's important for us to remember that, because these are very challenging times. And especially now our Pope Francis is not well, so we're praying for him. I'm praying for Botswana, because I know how hard it is when those flood waters come up and there's all kinds of diseases and things that can rise up out of that. We've had floods in Canada too. So we know what it's like when people lose everything and there's loss of life, there's loss of animal life, there's lots of people that get affected, and it's hard. It's very sad. If you're a caring person, it's very sad and you get affected by it. But we know that we'll get through it. And in our world, nations help each other. There's no nation that doesn't get help from another nation. Canada also gets help from other nations. We get help when we have our fires. South Africa helps. We get a lot of our products that are made, it might say finished in Canada, but a lot of the components are coming from China, from Africa. Our minerals come from Africa. The components that we use to make up our cell phones, the mining, it comes from different parts of the world. So even if you're saying buy Canada, yes, you can buy Canada, but not everything in that product is made solely in Canada. So that's important for me. I thought I would reflect on that, and just to know that God will always take us through the suffering. Just like the Israelites had to go through slavery, we are going through slavery in Canada. And Canada is being watched by the United Nations, by Amnesty International. The things that happened in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, they're still happening now, which is sad. Because you think that, okay, it's progressive, we need to move forward, but it's still the same thing. And that's why we join with others and we come together, whether it's in volunteering or our organizations, to try to change things and to try to make things better. And we try to use our knowledge. Knowledge is just knowledge. If you don't use it, then it doesn't make a difference. It doesn't help anyone. So we share our knowledge. Even when I join my calls for the volunteer groups I'm part of, we try to suggest what we think solutions are to the problems and the challenges that we are facing. We try to give our input, and if the organization is a good organization, they'll be open to it. If they're a bad organization, they'll just fire you from the job, remove you from the campaign, and tell you, well, we're not interested. If you can't handle 3 chats at a time, that's your job, you can go. So it really depends on the organization. It depends on their sense of compassion, what it means to be compassionate, what it means to care, and what it means for us to be people of the faith. Because it's not only Christians that are being persecuted. In general, people who are following religions that call us to love are being persecuted. So it's a difficult time in the world, and I mean, it's times that we never thought we would see it coming to this. I mean, beheadings, people are being beheaded in the Congo. Women are still being taken by Boko Haram. You know, people pretend to be your boyfriend or your partner, and then they get you into sex work. And even what happened with Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, those things used to happen. We knew about them. They've always happened. But this is horrendous. You take girls and you take them to an island, and there's no way for them to get off that island. It's very sad. But anyway, we can know that God does fill us with knowledge and understanding. He reveals to us good and evil, and He puts the light, His light, into our hearts. And that's what I try to hold on to. It's not easy for me. I hate staying at home, and I hate being all by myself. I don't like it. I don't enjoy it. That's why you see every day I post my videos, my dancing, my photographs, anything to get some attention, for people to say, oh, look, she posted something today, or to get some of my ideas out, my thoughts out that can help people. Because if I was with a partner or if I was living with someone, it would be different. But I'm completely alone. And when it's cold weather like this, I do still go out. I wrap up warm. If it's extreme cold, then yes, I don't go. I'm not somebody who doesn't know better. I know how to think for myself. But I try to get out, even if it's just to walk around the block and come home. Because isolation is not good. It's not good and it's not healthy. So that's how I keep my mental health strong. I connect with my friends through WhatsApp. We message each other daily. I keep in touch with my friends in different parts of the world, aside from Canada. So I thought I would just share that with you because I found that reading very beautiful. And I think it's important to remember what Archbishop Tutu told us. Sometimes suffering is just suffering. We won't know the reason for it until we get to the other side. And so that's what I focused on today. I didn't do the readings for the Chair of St. Peter for my reflection today, but I used the normal readings for the Saturday. And if you want to read the scripture, it's Ecclesiastes 17, 1 to 15. And it's out of what is in our hearts. Whatever is in our hearts, that's what comes out into the world. So I'll stop there and I'll turn the camera off. This is my microphone that I bought. I bought it because I want to do my speaking properly and I'm serious about it. I'm serious about my spiritual direction. I always have been. And I'm hoping that now with this John Maxwell, I'll be able to get the support and to be able to do it with others. And hopefully a job will fall into place for me too.